All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the first official Cultivated Culture live resume review. This is the first time we're doing this, so there will probably be some hiccups. I hope you guys don't mind bearing with us a little bit. But tonight, I'm really excited because we have two very, very awesome community members, Evan and Nita, joining us. And both of their fields that they're interested in are fields that I hear a lot about from the community, fields that people are interested in, marketing, project management, and business analytics or business analyst roles. So Nita, you're on the marketing side. I know you're going to hang out with us for a little bit and we'll get there in a second. So Evan, we're going to kick things off with you, man. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, why you submitted your resume. What issues are you running into with the job search? And then any specific questions or concerns that you have with your resume that you want to look at. Let's start there. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll get it rolling.
Okay. My name's Evan. I'm an MBA from the University of Miami. I worked in sales analytics for a cruise line. In professionally speaking, my one true love is travel. Built my own forecasting model when I was there, did my own sales bonus policy for a sales team that rewarded sales conversion for the first time ever, that gave one-to-one matchbacks of a true cost per lead, true cost per sale on every campaign that we ran. I went from there, I moved north, taught high school math for 3.5 years. Joined Hearst Digital Media initially as a trainer because I had to know their systems basically backwards and forwards to train them. I started to take on other responsibilities like project management and business analysis. I led some initiatives around ad targeting for a component we built for a partner, helped deploy this new content management system to 12 commercial sites in the span of 4 months. It was an amazing, intense, just high pressure thing where I had 8 days to learn the system I'd never seen in my life well enough to teach it to professional editors, and I did it, and it's probably the thing I'm most proud of professionally. Awesome. I worked for Hearst for 5.5 years, and after that I've kind of had some shorter jobs. A lot of the jobs that were out there were contract. The staff jobs I had, I was project manager for John Wiley for a little under years. I did launch projects, but it was a very kind of volatile, shrinking place. So, it was a real challenge getting the resources to do things we needed to do. I ended up leaving to take another opportunity. That didn't work out. I've been interviewing ever since. So kind of where I'm at.
Very cool. So you've been interviewing ever since. If you don't mind sharing, and you don't have to.
Go ahead.
When did the other opportunity end?
June of 2016.
Okay. So you have been searching for about 2 years now. Is that fair to say?
2 years. I did some small project stuff along the way, but it's mostly just this long sort of drudge of, the last one was death by 100 interviews. This is kind of death by 1,000 applicant tracking systems. So I get a lot of calls, but a lot of them are what I would consider the kind of low quality calls. Like they're offshore secondary recruiters trying to place people in a vendor management system for somebody like one of the major networks that I won't name right now. But basically, like when that certain network puts a job in their applicant tracking system, I will get sometimes 6, sometimes 20 different contacts from different recruiters about the same job, and I will never get an interview. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm right there in terms of the skills they're looking for, and people are just not capable of getting an interview for a candidate as far as I can tell. So, I did my networking. I did a lot of different things to try to kind of work my way into a door. I would say that I'm pretty adaptable. I've worked in 4 industries. I can learn industries very fast. I learn other people's process and technology extremely fast. Um, and the hard part for me is really just getting in the door. I'm not a coder and I'm not a seller.
Got it. Cool. And so if you had to basically give us an idea of the type of role that you're targeting here, I know when it's death by 1,000 applications, you're like, I'll take anything. But if you could pick one that you were like really going to focus in on, and you're like, if I could have any role, it would be this one. What would that be? And then if you have target companies, definitely feel free to share those as well.
Well, for one thing, most of my relevant experience is media, and my real passion is travel. So those two industries, or the intersection of those two industries, I did actually look at some of the travel websites that combine the two, and they looked great on paper, and I couldn't get anyone to give me the time of day there, but but it seemed like the right idea. In terms of the role, I'm pretty fluid on the role. I work at the interface of business and tech, whether we call that project management, product management, business analysis, or user training. The common theme there is it's either helping business use technology more effectively or helping technology better reflect the needs of business. All of those jobs have in common, you have to understand both the business and the technical rationale for everything you do. There is no way to do those jobs well without getting in both of their shoes. And really that's the space I like to be in. And if you call it project management or you call it business analysis, if you're doing those jobs right, they're hybrids anyway. You're getting in with your business users and understanding why they want technology to do something. You're getting in with your tech team and saying, the business described this, how close can you get? And it's that negotiation process that gets that work done. And really, as a project manager, I am not dogmatic about Agile or Waterfall. I'll go with whatever the dev team likes. I will get requirements to them in whatever form they like, whatever they understand and can deliver on. Really, what I'm after is what's the most pragmatic way to get this done. And that's really how I look at it for my projects.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself and what you're looking for and the challenges that you're dealing with. The goal tonight, I know death by 1,000 resumes is not fun. And I know that most everybody on the call, I would hope at this point, knows that I'm not a huge advocate for applying online as your primary source of finding jobs. However, I do advocate for applying online as a way to cover your bases, because you never know when you pop in an application and something may come your way, or you have something floating in the ether. That is fantastic, and you should absolutely be doing that. So the goal today for us will be to kind of get your resume to a point where you feel confident applying to something that's not like an overseas vendor recruiter type deal. It's a real company. Your resume is going to at least an in-house recruiter who's like in the same office. But you feel confident that you're at least going to have a chance to do the ATS. And then we're going to set it up so that if you do get through, or are seen by a human, because not every company uses ATS. If we're talking like, maybe we end up finding like a smaller startup that's focused on travel, maybe like a Skyscanner when 1 year in or something, back when it was that small. If we find something like that, typically one of my friends, Vanessa's friend as well, Madeline, she works at like a small blockchain startup, and she's in HR, and she reads all of their resumes just because they're that size. So either way, you're going to beat the ATS system. That's the goal. And then we're going to get you to a point where if a human reads your resume, they're going to bite, right? They're going to give you that call back, and they're going to get you that first interview. And then we move away from death by 1,000 applications, and then we move back to death by a couple of interviews, but we'll handle those interviews when we get there. So I'm going to real quick share your resume, and we will start from there. So the way that I was planning to handle this, and can you guys all see Evan's resume here?
Yep.
Cool. So names and locations have been redacted to protect the innocent or guilty here. But so we're going to go through, I think the best way to do this is the technical aspect first. So just a couple of basically the formatting and the structure and things of that nature. And then we're going to dive into each of the sections. And I think, Evan, the best way that I found to do this is to, rather than be like, this is bad, change it to this. Typically, I'll ask you questions. And then more pointed around like, why did you include this? Or tell me more about that. So we're going to kind of go through it that way. So you'll probably end up doing a little bit of explaining, but I think that's the best way for one, you to understand where I'm coming from, but also for everybody else on the call to kind of get into both elements here and understand why I'm asking you these questions and what I'm getting at, and basically the methodology behind how we're going to construct this in a way that's going to be very, very appealing to both the applicant tracking systems, but recruiters as well. Sound good?
That sounds great.
All right, awesome. So right off the bat, the setup is very, very solid. You know, fonts look good. The number one thing I'd recommend for everybody on the call, right below Evan's name here, his last name would be here, and then the contact info would be here. Typically, one thing I didn't see on your resume, Evan, you have your city, which is great. For people out there who are looking for a job in a separate city, I may recommend that you take your city off of your resume, just because it's so early in the process. You don't want to have something funky or small like that remove you from consideration or out in the recruiter's mind. But Evan, I think you're good to go. New York has a lot of stuff, and I assume you're looking locally, right?
Mostly locally. I'll look in the metro area, and I would take a short project somewhere else, but it's got to make sense, you know.
Totally.
I'm not going to move to Arkansas for for a 40% pay cut, and that's just not happening.
He doesn't want to go to Arkansas. Are you serious? Something's not lining up here. I'm just kidding. So you have New York. That's great. You have your phone number. You have your email. One thing I'd recommend doing, and Nita, you did a great job of this on your resume, but that would be to include a link to your LinkedIn page. It just makes it very easy for people to find you, and it just adds one more layer here.
Yeah. On
top of that, so the biggest thing right off the bat, and there's conflicting advice about this all over the internet, but the data that I've collected and a bunch of the sources that I relied on during my job search, and I continue to rely on to help people in the community land jobs, they basically say that a one-page resume is really your best bet. So we're sitting on 2 pages here. I do have a plan to bring it down to a single page, so you don't have to figure that out yourself. But one of the first and most obvious ways in my mind to do that is to shrink the margins a little bit. So at the top, you can definitely probably bump that down a good bit, and you can widen them out a little bit so the text kind of fills up more of the page, and the margins on the left and right side are a little bit smaller. And then on top of that, you can shrink the font of your name a little bit, and also the project manager / business analyst piece. That's just a very, very simple way for us to free up some space here. And I think if we do that in tandem with the other thing that I'm going to recommend, I think that will get us down to a single page. So right off the bat, that's a great place to start. And from a technical standpoint, that's pretty good. I do like that you also included your stuff on the bottom, but I don't think you need that if we're just sitting at a one-page resume. I think that's just going to chew up some space that we could potentially use for something a little bit more valuable in the recruiter's eyes. So I would just keep everything up top. I would add that link to your LinkedIn profile. I would shrink the margins, and then things are looking good. I like that you have the resume objective section here right at the top. I think you did a great job of adding these bullets, the 5 bullets that will basically be the most relevant things or the most valuable things that you have in relation to the job that you're looking for. We can talk about these a little bit more in a second. There are some ways that we can improve them a little bit. And then we'll cruise through professional experience here. So we have your consultancy, media business analyst. We'll talk a little bit about how you can spin this since you've been seeking opportunities, if I may, for the last couple of years. So we'll talk about that in a second. Then we have all this other great experience here, and I really, really love it. And until we get to right here, the New York City Department of Education. I know you mentioned this, but I want to hear in your words basically from the Department of Education through Renaissance Cruises. Why do you personally think that it's important for that to be on your resume, or for these 4 things to be on there?
Renaissance Cruises is on there because, in a sense, in terms of the freedom I had to do the kinds of things I was doing there and just the industry it was in, it's really where I want to be. That really, since I left that job, I have spent the entire time since trying to get back to something like that and not being able to do it. So taking it off is kind of like, it's almost like removing the goal, and it's removing 2 or 3 of the accomplishments I'm most proud of that really did formulate the way that I look at other business challenges. You know, the flowcharts that I do for business process now are descendants of the charts that I used to document their sales process, do their call routing, and other things. It's just, I actually use a very similar Visio format to what I was using back then.
Got it.
So I guess it's just because I'm so reluctant to take away a job that is really dead on what I'm looking for. The other 3 don't really matter.
Okay.
Amadeus is also travel, but you know, it's really just to keep Renaissance in there. I just have a hard time getting rid of that one.
Sure. And then you need to fill the gap, right, between Renaissance and the next relevant piece.
Yeah. Teaching can turn out relevant if it's a training management role, for instance, or if it's educational media or some other things. So let's say that teaching isn't strictly relevant, but occasionally it's relevant to a specific role.
Got it. But you do have some training experience up here. So
yeah.
One thing that I'd recommend that you could potentially look into is removing, this is where I was going with bring up some space here. You can go ahead and remove these 3. So the Department of Education, the American International, I'm pronouncing that right, and Amadeus. Yeah. You can nix those. You can move Renaissance Cruises up. And then what you can do is you can, instead of formatting the dates like this, you can just put the number of years of experience that you have over here. So you could say, 2 years consulting. You could say X number of months here. It's late. Math is not working for me.
I got you.
And likewise, you can keep going down here. So you could basically put these in order. And then if anybody asks you, you can just say that the experience that you're looking at here is a representation of the best experience that you have for this role. And it's going to allow you to do, I really agree with the point that, Renaissance is very relevant to what you're looking for. And again, you said some of the stuff you're most proud of, but also probably is going to be most valuable to the people hiring at whatever travel tech company you land at. I think that's something that you could consider. But I think the other 3, as you mentioned, I think they're not adding a ton here, and they're kind of, the further down the page we go, the less likely it is for somebody to be reading this, especially if it's on 2 pages. So if we nix these and just move Renaissance Cruises up, that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Awesome. So now let's go through some of these bullets, and we'll spend a little bit of time here, but not a ton. We'll maybe just focus on the top couple. And the idea is just to give you some insight into like how I think about writing resume bullets and the type of stuff that you want to include here, how you want to format them. So if we start, we'll skip over the. Actually, no, we can start with this. So. It may be a bit tougher, but you can tell me how much tangible, like what the results look like. Are they measurable, et cetera? So the first thing that I would ask is like this business case for Ernst & Young for a business process project. Mm-hmm. What was the case study? What was the goal of the case study? Like for us, when we run a case study, we want to showcase like a win or something very innovative. So is that in line with what you were with what you were looking to get across here, or what was the purpose of creating the case study?
What it was is I was doing some work with a startup that they had been hired by Ernst & Young to document the present state of this process they had for gathering feedback from clients. And it was kind of a challenging one because they were very secretive about what they told their contractor about what needed to be in there. So they basically wanted us to know what their process was, write up a case study about it that would enable them to say, put it forth for improvements, modernization, that kind of thing. It wasn't a case study of a win in the sense of, after change X went into effect, here's how much better everything is. It was really the before stage of that. It's, we know we have this process. We know we want to improve it. Describe it and give us something to work with. So that's what I did. And even though they didn't tell us what the before state was, they were kind enough to leave a lot of documentation scattered all over the internet. So when I was able to figure out what they were asking, and I was able to find some documentation on that project, on that process, and I wrote up a case study about it that would enable them to, to really run with it and, make whatever changes they were going to make. But I wasn't privy to what those changes were.
Got it. And I assume the case study is not public, is it?
Nope.
Okay.
They wanted it as Company X in the written document. They made us call them Company X.
Nice. And so
I never signed an NDA for them, and the startup kind of neglected to pay me, so I'm not bound by any confidentiality on that case. So I'll name Ernst & Young, but not the startup.
Got it. Yeah. So something, and for learnings kind of across the board for everybody listening, if you do have something like this, obviously, Evan, for the nature of the case study, it's not as results oriented. But if the case study is showcasing something like a win or whatnot, it's one of the best things you can do is include those results. So you could say like a business case study for Ernst & Young showcasing the fact that, we implemented X and the results were Y. So that's obviously not as relevant in this case. But the other thing that you can do that's great is leverage the nature of digital resumes here. So you could include a link to the case study. And Evan, I'll leave that decision up to you. But what that does is it offers your hiring managers or the recruiter, whoever's looking at your resume, it gives them basically an outlet. So the biggest issue that I have with resumes is that you're expected to like quote unquote be yourself and like prove your worth on this 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with black and white ink. And none of us, I don't think, would describe ourselves as 8.5 by 11 pieces of white paper with black ink. So anytime that you can jump outside of that box is a plus. Like if you, like I wrote a piece on resume skills and I suggested that the person, if they were in graphic design and they created something for like Seamless, and it was very visual. So I had them include a piece of that in the resume. So anytime you can jump outside of the box, that's great. And links are they're very easily accessible because most resumes these days are digital. And if you have a link in there and you print it out, it's not, there's no harm done. So that's potentially something that you could do here. So let's get down to the next one. We'll come back to framing up what to do with employment. But so for the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, we're doing some training stuff here. And anytime there's training involved, there's typically an end goal to the training that I've found. So we're talking like successful delivery. What would you, or what did the company consider to be a successful delivery? Is that just like, hey, we made the training and now it's available? Or is that, hey, we executed it and here was our goal, as in we wanted to improve this process or increase sales or get more adoption of this feature, and we did that via the training? was it more in the second bucket or the first, which is just we made it?
The Royal Institution's goals with that training was really to sell the training and
Okay.
And get paid.
Nice.
So I was essentially running a revenue center, or what should have been a revenue center for them. And we did, in fact, deliver training to the International Monetary Fund on my watch. You know, a lady on my team coordinated it with a trainer we hired. The goals really were the goals of the IMF, which was more of a standardization around project management. They're trying to get some uniformity into their MO. In terms of the training for the Caribbean subsidiaries of CIBC, which is one of the big Canadian banks, they had a major issue with valuation of property, and because banks loan money against property, if you make a $100,000 loan, you need to know if the property you've loaned against is a $100,000 property or $1 million property or a $20,000 property, because, you know, clearly their risk profile goes off the rails if valuation is not measured correctly. So those were the goals of our clients. My goal, and what I started to do, frankly, was to build the infrastructure that would allow this to be a real business. So what I was doing with those courses, I didn't manage to stay long enough to execute it, but what I was doing with those courses was defining what had been kind of bespoke custom courses as standardized products that we could, with minimal customization on the surface, deliver to multiple clients, thereby making a sustainable business.
Yeah. And sorry to interrupt you. Do you know like about how many clients ended up purchasing these? Do you know like how much some of these deals were valued at?
No, because I was out before it really had a chance to bear fruit. So because the headquarters in the UK viscerally disagreed with the idea of productizing training for a business and saw the business as creating custom materials for each client each time.
Cool.
Not cool. They, as a business model, that's off the rails in so many directions. Mm-hmm. You can't even. I'm not going to start, but it's like, you know.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they were in charge. I wasn't, and that was the end of that.
Definitely. So I still think we have some good stuff to work with here. So sure. In an ideal world, you know maybe a couple of clients that we sold into or deal size, but if we don't know that, I think that you can still, so instead of just simply putting, successful delivery of training services, I would try and frame this bullet more around the fact that you basically took resources that the company already had and turned them into a product that then became a main source of monetization for the company. So just rewording this to focus on that, basically you could say, I'm trying to think off the top of my head here, but a led project to purpose internal content to create an additional revenue stream for the company. Was it a major revenue stream?
Let's say that it wasn't. Basically, I didn't get past the building the infrastructure for something that could be a revenue stream at all, and not kind of really a dead end. I mean, the model they had in mind was taking British content as is and selling it to Americans and Canadians. And that doesn't work because we're different countries and a lot of it's regulatory. And even the very idea, the UK is very centralized. We have 50 states regulating real estate and construction. So if we took it and standardized it, it might be right in California, but wrong in Texas or Nevada. It's like really, I was trying to bring some sense into a business model that was not suitable for the United States. Yeah. And, if my boss had backed me up a little longer and I'd survived another 6 months, they would have seen some results from it. But, you know,
Sure.
it went where it went. And
so I would focus on that piece of it.
Yeah.
So what it really comes down to, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make, but are also kind of hesitant to do, is spin their bullets a little bit.
Yeah.
So your resume is essentially, I know you said at the beginning of the call, you're not a sales guy, but your resume is essentially like a sales brochure for you. And so you want to make these things as appealing as possible. So when we're talking about like this specific bullet, I would focus on the fact that you were brought in to find a way to monetize what they already had. And you can say that you developed and started to execute on a plan to do that. So I would reframe this bullet to focus much, much more on that. It doesn't have to be super literal. And if people ask you, if somebody does ask you what you did there, you can tell them, I got hired on to do this. I got hired on to basically take these, like all this mess and turn it into something that we could then flip and sell in another country and generate revenue. And so I built out the plan, and we started executing on it. And you can spin it that way. So that's basically the mindset that you want to have for a lot of these bullets. Just due to time, I do want to get to two other things.
Sure.
And we can always continue the conversation afterwards as well. But basically, it's very easy for me to sit here and be like, guys, just add measurable results and you will get a job. But not every scenario and not every position and all that has measurable or tangible results. So my advice to everybody on the call, and my challenge, would be to try to think about it in best light possible. How can you spin that bullet to be as attractive as possible without obviously like straight up lying? You never want to lie on here, but you want to be able to, it's all about telling stories. And so this is kind of where you sit down, you think about it, you write the bullet out, and then you just ask yourself the question, what if somebody asked me about this in detail? How would I explain it? And you kind of build that narrative in your head. So that's how I would think of a lot of these bullets. And the two questions that I always ask myself, or the people that I work with, that I find to be pretty effective, that you can ask yourself when you're going through bullets, is basically, if somebody has something that's more general, like we created a case study or proposal, I was responsible for this. The number one question is, why did the company pay you to do that? So what is the company hoping to get out of paying you to be responsible for this book of business? Are they paying you to grow it? Are they paying you to optimize processes? Are they paying you to develop a new revenue stream? Why are they paying you money to do whatever it is that you're thinking? And if
Sorry about that. So it's why are they? So basically, look at all these bullets with why are they paying me to do this?
Yes. And then the second question you want to ask yourself is, how is the company measuring my success? So one, why are they paying me to do this? And then how do they know that I'm doing a good job? Why are they keeping me around? And if they didn't keep you around, that's fine. It's more the answer that you get from asking the question, which is basically what it's forcing you to do is think about it in terms of value. So that's what you want to do for all of these bullets, because at the end of the day, a lot of people can come in and say, like, I created a business case. Or I drafted up a proposal, or, I successfully delivered trainings. And the spectrum is very wide, right? Like, what's your definition of a successful delivery? Going back to what I asked before,
I'll tell you mine for the IMF.
Sure.
It was that at the end of the session that I observed, which was the second to last session of the training they'd purchased, before I arrived, they sat me down to talk about what they wanted the next training to be about, and we started working out the details of that. So success to me was, if your customer wants more, that's a success.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like especially given the scenario that we're talking about here, that's like the definition of success. But my point is that when there's somebody who's never met you before,
Yeah.
they don't know that, and they don't know how you delivered against that success. So like, my neighbor here next to me in my apartment building may think that a successful delivery of training is like he put a couple slides together and he got on a call and he delivered it. Whether that delivery was good or terrible, nobody knows. But the guy, who's in the apartment above you may think that a successful delivery is they delivered the training, they closed X% of deals off of that training, which generated Y in revenue. And that's a very, very broad gap, right? And so you want to do your best. Most people, regardless of what your definition is, most people, when they put the bullets on their resume, they tend to convey them in a way that skews them towards the first thing that I mentioned, the first example, which is basically this kind of wishy-washy vague thing. If you can get very specific about the value you delivered in any sort of context, it doesn't have to be dollars. It doesn't have to be like something like super salesy or whatever. Any way that you added value, like you created a revenue stream for these people. And so if you push into that, if you lean on that and express that in your bullet, that's going to go a lot further than just saying that you successfully delivered trainings. So that would be those are the two questions I would go through all these bullets and I would ask yourself, why was the company paying me to do this? And how would my boss measure my success? And then try to write your bullet answering those two questions. So that's basically what I would do for all the bullets in the professional experience here. For the resume objective up top, just given time, I don't want to dwell on it too long, but basically you want to do the exact same thing here, but your goal with this, and it looks like you've done a pretty good job, but since we have like a very, very specific role that we're going after, this is something that you're probably going to tweak for the role that you're basically applying for. So what you want to do is go look at the job description and see what they have on there. And then you just want to pick bullets that match that job description or what they're looking for as best as you possibly can. Because basically what that's going to do is when it goes through the applicant tracking system, the ATS is going to see all these relevant things right up top. So that's going to be a bonus for you. And then when it gets into the hands of a human being, they're going to be looking for, they scan it for a couple of seconds and their subconscious is basically looking for all these pre-qualifiers. And if they see all those things right up at the top, that immediately hurdles that obstacle. They believe you're qualified, they've seen it, and now they're ready to see more, and they go down in the professional experience section. So that's what I want you to think about. And then just to close out real quick, all the way at the bottom of the resume here, we have this skills section. And I understand for a project manager, we talked about different languages that the devs like to use and all that stuff that's very technical. That is important. The way that I would include that is rather than having a skill section, because if I handed you some stranger's resume and their skill section looked like this, you probably wouldn't be super excited to read it. And that's not a knock to you. That's just the way that the recruiter is looking at this. So what I would do is very specific things that the job asks for. Like if in the job description it says, we want somebody with agile experience, include that in the resume objective bullets and include that in your professional experience bullets. And that way you're weaving it in. The keyword pops up a couple of times, so you're good on the ATS. The people will see it. It's right at the top of the resume rather than at the bottom. And what this does is it's going to open up some space for us to include something else, which is an interest section. And so I always recommend adding an interest section that's like a little bit more unique, because this is going back to we want to get out of that box. So if we can basically make a connection through the resume here, that's going to be a big, big plus for us. So you mentioned that, your one true love is travel. So that's what I would lead off on, especially if you're going after travel companies. And for everybody else on the call, basically there's like a couple of things that every human being is happy to talk about that usually doesn't bring up negative emotions. It's not polarizing. It's not controversial. The things tend to be travel, food, college. So like where you went to school or what sports conference you were in. And there's a couple more. I have them on the site. They're in a bunch of the articles on resumes. Pretty easy to find. But basically you want to take those things, and the travel is a really good one here. But instead of what most people do is they say like, I love to travel, or they say something like, um, I really love Indian, and that's great, but a lot of people love Indian food, and pretty much everybody I know would say that they love to travel if I ask them. So we want to get a little bit more specific. You can start with saying that I love to travel, but maybe share some of your favorite experiences while you were traveling. So something like, eating sun-dried octopus in Mykonos that was caught that very same day and dried next to our table. Something like that, because if somebody has been to that place, you're narrowing the possibility of a match a little bit. But if somebody has done the thing that you've done, that is an immediate bond, an immediate connection. And that's going to start up a conversation that's a little bit more personal. And that's going to break down some of those professional barriers. And the rest of the interview is going to be a little bit less stiff, etc. So I have it marked on my sheet here as replacing your skill section at the bottom. If we have a one-page resume, that's okay. If you want to get bold, you can move it up and put it just below the resume objective. And so basically what that will do is the person reading the resume will come in and they'll say, all right, Evan, he's applying for a project manager role. Is he qualified? Boom, 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 5 bullets. Yes, he's qualified. He meets all the things that I had in my subconscious and that we have on the JD. That's great. Now I'll go to professional experience. Oh, wait, here's some interest. And then, oh man, like his favorite author is my favorite author. Or we both traveled to like Tibet and went to the Dalai Lama's palace and meditated for an hour. Although we did it different years or something. And stuff like that creates a little bit more of a personal relationship. My advice is to cover as many of those cases as you possibly can. You can lead with travel, but then maybe talk about, again, your favorite author, favorite books. Talk about, I don't know if school is big for you, but you could talk about like where you went to school, or if you like their sports teams. If you don't, that's totally fine. But feel free to also like be yourself here. Talk about bands that you like. Talk about an amazing concert you went to. Talk about like the coolest experience you had in New York City. Like talk about things that are really personal to you, and do it in a positive way. And that's really going to help build a personal connection with the person sitting on the other side of the table there. So I hope that makes sense. I don't mean to cut us short here. We're just past time, so I want to make sure you get the idea. But
oh yeah,
do you have any questions on the stuff that we talked about?
I do, but one thing I'd love is I saw you had some notes on my resume. If you could send me a scan of the notes, I'd love to see them.
That'll be $50, no problem.
I'll write you a check.
I'm just kidding, for sure. I'll take a picture, and I'm actually planning to. I was considering sending them out to everybody, but I'll get your permission on that first. You absolutely will get them, so no problem. And then also, if you want to hop on another call, or if you want to continue this over email, I'm more than happy to do that as well. But Evan, thank you so much for submitting your resume and for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate the insight, and I'm going to mute and listen to what you have to say to Nita.
All right, sounds good. Nita, thank you for hanging in. How are you?
Good. I am good. I've been listening and thinking, oh no, I can't do that with my resume, but we'll see.
I don't know about that. We will see. All right, cool. So I have yours pulled up here now. Nita, can you just give us a little bit of background on you? Can you tell us just a little bit about who you are and what issues you've been running into during the job search, and also what issues you feel like you've been having with your resume? And then finally, tell us a little bit about what you're looking for. Same question that I asked Evan there, like, is there a specific role that you want at a specific company? Is it a little bit more general? So just answering the 3 questions is a great place to start.
Okay. Well, I'm one of the people, few people that I know who went to college and graduated with a degree that I'm actually in or working in.
One of the few.
So that's something. I just went to a college reunion and met up with people, and except for the people in the business school, I probably am the only one who was doing communications out of a communication school. My background is pretty, I'd say, specific. It's financial services, and Well, yes, it's all been financial services.
Okay.
And for 20 years, I've done marketing. I've been in the marketing group doing communications consulting. I don't know what else to say.
All right.
I think that the jobs I'm looking for, there are a lot of financial services firms in Boston and, and elsewhere that offer remote jobs. So I'm really focused on a few companies, big companies in Boston that offer retirement services. I guess just retirement services, because my job has been creating communications plans and marketing programs, working with advisors and plan sponsors to move their retirement plan goals, to move it ahead.
Okay.
So recently I just started looking in a couple months ago. I started in August, searching. I was previously a contractor and my contract ended, and we are required to do furloughs for the company that I'm working with. So my furlough started and ended, and I'm back in the job market now.
Okay.
Let me think.
So do you, if you feel comfortable answering, Nita, but are you employed right now, or are you seeking opportunities?
Seeking opportunities.
Okay, cool. So I'm glad that I am not, we will get you out of that position. I'm not glad that you're in that position, but I'm glad that I have a chance to talk about how to address that, because Evan, I promised that to you. We didn't get to it. So we're going to get to it now with Nita. But awesome. So Nita, do you feel like you are just applying and not hearing back? Is that the biggest issue, or is there anything else that you're feeling stuck on?
Yeah, well, that's a big issue. I've actually since August been contacted by in-house recruiters for two financial services firms, and they both went really well. The first one, I did some phone interviews, and then was asked for an in-person interview with a panel. And I really thought that went really well, but I think my salary, was higher than others, so I did not get that job.
Okay.
And then I had a second interview, and I really spent like a month, and I did 14 interviews, phone and in person. They actually flew me down to Houston, and I spent the day, I think, with 9, back-to-back 9 interviews. So I really, really thought I was going to get the job, but at the last minute, the chief marketing officer had a change of mind that it was not going to be a remote position, and she wanted me to move to Houston. So that was something that was never
discussed.
Never discussed. It was always remote, and I think it took the hiring manager by surprise. It took me by surprise, and that was just a really big bummer, because I was very excited about that position.
Yeah, I can imagine. That sucks. I'm sorry. Well, let's dive in here, and let's figure out how to get you something that you love pretty quickly. So you're no longer seeking opportunities, and you are seeking your next promotion. So with that said, we'll do the same thing, same framework that we did with Evan, and we'll go through kind of the technical stuff first, and then we will dive into the specific bullets. So to start, I love that you have all of your information up here. For people on the call, if you look like just to the right of Nita's name here, we have these little icons, and that had all of her information. So this is her LinkedIn URL. She has her email, she has her phone number, and her address was up top here as well. I think that's awesome. What I'd love to see you do is actually take these and spread them out horizontally instead of having them vertical like this, or stacked on top of each other, if that makes sense. So that way you'll have basically like your LinkedIn, then you'll have your address, then your email, then your phone, and that's just going to save us some space. So that's the first thing I would do. Then same thing I recommended to Evan. I think you can shrink some of the margins at the top, especially, and then same with the bottom. And we do have a little bit of room to play with on the sides here. So that's going to get us closer to our 1-page goal. I do really like what you did with this resume objective, if you will. There's definitely some ways that we can improve it, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But this is a great next step. I am going to have you throw in an interest section either just below it or at the very bottom of the resume, whatever you feel most comfortable with. We'll talk about the experience in just a second, but the main thing here is just getting this down to one page again. So I know that can seem very daunting, especially when you have such a breadth of amazing experience that you do have. I mean, this goes way back. You are like a veteran. So my question for you would be the same as Evan's. Basically, the rule of thumb is last 10 years or so on the resume. So can you tell me why you believe everything from this assistant vice president down, why that is critical to the success of your resume, why it's on there, in your opinion?
I can see where, that's a good question. I think I wanted to get Fidelity in there because here in Boston, Fidelity, everyone's rotated through Fidelity at one point.
Okay.
But I could take from Scudder Kemper down through Fidelity off because that would give me closer to the to the 10, the 10 years. I do like the MFS because that was like a really productive time. I won a lot of awards and did my first sales presentations, won those. So I really kind of wanted to have MFS, which was I think 2000 to 2006.
Okay.
In there.
So the good news for you is that that's sitting one slot below where our cutoff was. So what if we did this? What if we took this stuff out, basically Scudder, the senior communication consultant down, we remove that. We basically put in one line that says, with however much experience is here, we got 90 to 2000. So with you can say additional 10 years of experience at Scudder and Fidelity available upon request, or something along those lines. Basically one line that says, I have 10 extra years of experience. You can drop the Fidelity name, you can drop the Scudder name, and you can say, I'm happy to talk about it if you bring it up. So that's a way to incorporate the names while still saving us a little bit of space. I think we can still get away with one page if we trim some of the fat with the bullets, do the margin thing, squeeze this guy up on one line, and then worst case scenario, you can bump the font down like half a point or a full point. But I think that's the first place to start. So I hope you feel comfortable with that. But in my experience, typically people look at the first couple of jobs here, the first couple of paragraphs and bullets in terms of experience. And the last one or two usually don't get as much love, typically because people will decide after reading your objective in the first or the most recent positions that you've had, they'll have an idea of whether they like you and basically want what you have to say. I don't know too many people who have gotten hired because of something that they did 10 years ago that suddenly blew this person's mind in the present. So if you think about it that way, I think the main focus should be on these top three.
Okay.
And then we can keep this on here. I understand. I noticed that a lot. This is where you have a lot of those quantitative metrics, which is fantastic. So we can leave this on there, and then we'll drop in that line at the bottom that basically says, for more information around the previous 10 years of experience at Fidelity and Scudder, just ask. So that's where I would start. Then we can go into some of the bullets here. So I'm basically going to ask similar questions that I asked Evan, but it looks like some of this might be a little bit more tangible, if you will. So we have consolidated 529 marketing collateral by 38%. That is awesome. We have a hard number that we can use that is showcasing value right off the bat. But then in the next couple of bullets, and even at the end of this bullet, I think there's room for more of that, which is what we want. So we have executed communications campaigns to promote the firm's education plan. What is a communications campaign?
It is delivering messages to the financial advisors. So it's an internal it's an internal way of notifying advisors through different distribution channels
Okay.
that we have about what's been happening with the 529 market, what's been happening with regulatory, the regulatory impact, that kind of thing.
Okay. Awesome. And was the goal, so to promote the firm's 529 plan, was the goal to get those internal people to promote it for you, or they would be the ones promoting and you're kind of giving them the ammo to go do that?
Yes, the second. So I'm providing them with information they can use to sell to their clients.
Okay. And I assume that you don't have any numbers on, what that led to, or like increased adoption of the 529 plan or anything like that, do you?
We've done a couple of campaigns where I don't think my work directly contributed to this.
But it had a piece of it, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So I think it contributed. What are those numbers? What do they look like?
I'd have to go back and look.
Okay. But you have them. So I'm so glad that you said that. This is another big mistake that people make when they're writing their resumes. If you were involved in a project in some capacity and that project got an outcome, like it is very easy for us in our minds to basically say like, I was a small part of that, everybody else did the heavy lifting, but we're still selling here and you're selling yourself. And when it comes down to that, you want to make yourself look as good as you possibly can. So if you were involved in a program that then went out and got results, you absolutely need to include that on your resume. And you having the results, let's say you go back and look for those results and you found, 3 campaigns worth of results. Maybe there were 50 campaigns, but just take the numbers from those 3 campaigns and basically say, these, I executed these communication campaigns to promote the firm's 529 education program. That led to blah, 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 measurable result, and an average campaign KPI of X. So now you have a couple of metrics that you can throw in here that are going to make this a little bit more compelling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, that is great. I was struggling with how to provide more quantitative information, but that would be, that's great. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, of course. So we're going to keep doing the same thing on this third bullet here. Manage digital content on internal and external websites, including creating, posting, and updating messages, as well as analyzing metrics. What metrics did you analyze?
Usage, views, number of views, number of, there are 2 main things. I can only think of views right now.
Okay.
And I think downloads.
Okay. And do you have any of those results, or do you remember anything? Do you remember trends? Did the views increase? Did the downloads increase?
In some cases, yes, for some products, but in some cases, not so much.
Okay.
But I keep everything. So, most of the stuff that's on my resume has come from, my performance reviews and things that I save for my performance reviews.
Okay.
So I can find them.
Nice. So for everybody else on the call, Nita is doing what everybody should be doing, which is keeping track of the results that you got. So one of the things that I hate the most, this is an instance of do as I say, not as I do, if you will. But I'm the worst when it comes to keeping track of my performance at work. I always end up for my performance reviews, I'm like scrambling a week before to remember what I did over the last 3 months and the results they generated and all that. It gets a little busy running Cultivated Culture on the side and with everything else going on. But for you guys, the number one thing that I can recommend that you do is when you have a project or an initiative or even like a day-to-day task, take note of it and make sure you get some sort of result. So if you are delivering, if you're delivering the firm's 529 education planning program to the sales team, ask a salesperson and be like, hey, how much did this help? How many did you sell? And get in the habit of asking a few people. That's going to do 2 things. One, it's going to get you results that you can put on your resume, but it's also a great avenue for you to build connections and relationships with people outside of your own team at the office. So even if you're shy or whatever, I totally understand. You can send an email about it if you're more comfortable doing that. But going to other people and other teams and trying to get that tangible value from the project that one, you either managed yourself or had a small part in, that is going to be so huge when it comes time to write your resume or ask for a raise or apply for a promotion or a new job internally. Because like as Nita said, she's like, yeah, I'll go back and I have all the stuff. I just need to go find it. That's the position you want to be in. You want to have all these things just sitting on a Google Doc somewhere so that you can just easily reference them. But having that will make your life so much easier, and it will make your resume so much more effective. So Nita, for this specific one, if you can go back and grab some of those metrics, you can just focus on the areas where things increase. And I don't know how granular the metrics get, but if you have like, maybe for 529 education plans, the downloads decrease, but maybe for I don't even know if you work on 401ks, but maybe 401k planning downloads increased. You can leave out the 529 thing and you can just say, we increased 401k information downloads by 40% during the 6 months that we ran that project or something. So you just focus on the positive stuff, try to include those results. And that's absolutely the best way to do this. But for everybody else on the call, please, starting even tomorrow, like you don't have to go back and backdate, but just tomorrow, like think of all the projects that are on your plate, put them in a Google Doc. And then as the project progresses, just write one bullet and be like, today, talk to X person, we got buy-in. That's fine. That's all you have to do. And then if you just make that a habit, when it comes time to write your resume or whatever it may be, you have all the information sitting there. You don't have to comb through emails. You don't have to like rack your brain. It's all just sitting right there, and it just makes life so much easier. So that is number one recommendation coming out of this so far. So let's do one more bullet, and then we'll keep things rolling. Actually, I think Nita, do you have a good idea of what I'm getting at in terms of how you want to structure these bullets?
Yes.
So going back to what I said, Evan, when I said, ask why somebody's paying me to do this and then how they would judge me, to put that in context of these bullets. So somebody hired Nita to consolidate this marketing and disseminate it across the sales teams. And they're going to judge that success most likely by the number of 529 plans that were sold through or adopted or whatever. And so Nita is able to say, I consolidated the collateral, which is what you're paying me to do. And then I pushed it out, which is what you're paying me to do. And I got X result, which is your measure of success. So that bullet fully encapsulates everything that we want in a bullet. So hopefully this adds some context to what we were talking about earlier. But
that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for flagging it. I guess one of the things I'll flag is that most of the managers I've had weren't measuring my performance at all. They were largely oblivious to it.
Yeah.
It was kind of like if nothing was on fire, they didn't know I existed.
And I think a lot of people are in that position. And so that's why you sort of have to, we call it in our team, our organization, we call it managing up. But basically that's where the onus is sort of on you to get after your manager or track down the results yourself. If you're at the company another 6 months there and you get your training programs out and their people are buying them, like go hit up the sales team and be like, hey man, how many of those did you sell last month? Or how many of those have we sold all quarter? Go to like the VP of sales or marketing or whoever, and just try. And if anybody asks you and be like, yeah, we're just putting together some internal collateral so that we can get some visibility. Like I'm happy, you will absolutely be credited with this, blah, 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 make them feel good about it. And people aren't, you guys work at the same company. If you're nice about it and you make it seem like there's something in it for them with visibility and credit and whatever, people aren't going to hold this stuff from you. And that's going to get you the information that you need to add to your resume or ask for that raise or whatever it is. So Nita, for this resume objective, we'll call it right here. So I like the marketing manager who regularly exceeds expectations. You can keep that in there. I think one of the things that you could also do here is if there's like an all up number that you have, and I'm not sure if there is, but this is a place to add it. If there's like one specific bullet that you want to get across in blue and bold, you can do this right at the top. One of the best ways to gauge whether there's something there or not is to just take a look at the job description you're applying for and see what exactly they're asking for. And if there's something that they're like, this person needs to have X and it's right at the top of the job description, and you're like, I got that. You can pop that right up at the top. Otherwise, you can just you can keep marketing manager regularly exceeds expectations. That's totally fine. But what I'd love to see here is in this little paragraph, you have 20 years of experience, which is fantastic. You talk about the industry that you're in. But then we talk about defining, developing, and delivering targeted marketing strategies. And we talk about multiple award-winning campaigns. So what I would love is for these bullets right here that I can't highlight all the way, these guys, I would love for you to swap out these buzzwords for some more details on these award-winning campaigns. And I want you to do that in context of the job description that you're looking at. So if the job description is talking about 529 plans, boom, that bullet that we just talked about, that's going right at the top. And so basically you're going to pick like 3 to 5 bullets that meet the criteria we talked about before. They have the quantitative metrics. You're able to answer, why are you paying me to do this? And have I beaten your expectations for success? You're going to take a couple of those that are the most relevant to the job description, and you're going to pop them into this section so that when somebody looks at this, when we change up the icons, they're going to see Nita. I don't think you need the senior marketing communications manager, by the way, especially it's sort of redundant with what we have right here.
Yes.
So you can pick one or the other, but that's going to save us a line of space as well. So we're going to have Nita, we're going to have all of your contact info, and then immediately we're going to know that you're a marketing manager who exceeds expectations, and here's why, and here's how it directly relates to the role that you're applying for. So again, the ATS system that's looking at this is going to say like, man, Nita knows what she's doing. Like, we're going to push her through the system here. We're going to get her into a real human's hands. And then the human that looks at it, again, that subconscious 6-second scan where they're just looking for those buzzwords. They're looking for the experience that kind of gets them over the hump that not many people have. All that is immediately going to be answered in this section with value that's very tangible for the person who's reading it. And then they're going to want to read more, and they're going to start scrolling down to this experience section. So do you have any questions about that, or is that sort of clear as to?
Yes, it's very clear, and it makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So the last thing here that I would say is I love the education. We definitely want to add an interest section here. So I will say the same thing that I said before with Evan. You can put it at the bottom if you want. I found that it's a little bit more effective towards the top, just below your resume objective, because again, it adds sort of that personal human element. But again, it's whatever you feel comfortable with. The most important thing is that we're talking about stuff that is interesting to you and also allows you to be yourself, but also has a chance to connect with the recruiter. So Nita, if you don't mind sharing, what is something that you could talk about for 4 hours and not get tired of?
I don't know. I'm pretty boring.
Not true. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Travel. Well, who's your favorite author? Do you have one?
I read constantly, so I don't have any one favorite. But
okay. What's your favorite book that you read in the last month?
Or
2. Or
yeah, I can't think of the name. Something secret. Something I can't remember.
Is it fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
Okay. Do you prefer fiction?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the little nuggets in here could be, avid fiction reader. My favorite book in the last 2 months is whatever the title of that book is.
Really?
So that's one. Or you could just put, if you want to broaden it up a little bit, you could say, my favorite author right now is, and then just pop in the author of that book. And then anybody who's read any of that person's books, we kind of open the field up a little bit. So you're an avid reader. if you had a weekend by yourself and you were not allowed to read, what would you do instead?
Oh God.
You can watch Netflix shows if you want.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just binge watched something this weekend. So
Whether you want to share that or not, that's another great thing that you can put on here. You can say something like, like Netflix, maybe not Netflix addict, but you can talk about that show. You can drop it in. But I think the biggest mistake that people make is that they say like avid Netflix watcher. And like, yes, you and millions of other people are avid Netflix watchers. But if you go one level deeper and you talk about like name 2 of your favorite shows, or like say like I can't stop watching X. Everybody I talk, so I'm not a big TV person and I'm not a big Netflix person. So I am somewhat left out of these conversations at work, but everybody in my office talks about the shows that they're watching, like nonstop. And it's such an easy conversation starter. So if you have something in there where you pop in this show that you binge watch, or maybe you pop in 2, and the person sitting across from you, maybe they love that show. Maybe their wife or husband loves that show. Or maybe they heard about it and they're really curious. That going to that level of detail will really open up the doors to a conversation in a way that just putting like, I love TV shows or avid Netflix watcher does not. So I know it's hard when you're put on the spot and somebody's like, what do you like to do? And you're like, I don't know. No worries. You don't have to come up with stuff now, but maybe just take some time to think. And again, be yourself. So for me, I'll try to remember the couple on my resume. And if you guys, for everybody listening, if you do go to the some of the articles on resumes on the site, I think the one on how to write a resume has the exact thing I put on my resume. But basically, I said that I love foods that are vehicles for hot sauce. And so like people who love hot sauce, like love hot sauce. And that was easily the most commented on thing on my resume, like more than the experience that I had. So that's a good one. I talk about travel, but then I'd mention like a very specific experience. So I said the same thing with Evan, but if you were like, my wife, Lily, and I just went to Santorini for our honeymoon, and we walked this awesome trail between the town that we were in and the main town, Ia. And so I could put in like watching the sunset from the top of that trail. And so anybody else who's done that, that's an instant connection. So again, you want to span as many things as you can between like food and sports and TV shows and books, travel, all of those, music, all of those are very, very safe bets. And the more that you can cover, the more likely you are to land that connection. So that's probably that may, I don't know. I find with people that tends to be the toughest thing. So if you do need help, definitely feel free to take a stab at it and send me an email back. And I'm happy to help out. But I think that covers most of it. The main things would be to get it down to 1 page. We'll remove some of that old experience up to 2007. We'll add in that line that says, ask me about Fidelity if you want to learn more. And then we're just going to go back to that treasure trove of measurable metrics that you have and try to apply that to every single bullet that you possibly can in your work experience here. And then as you apply to jobs, this resume objective section is going to be a little more fluid. It's going to change with every job that you apply to, but try to understand what the job description is looking for. Why are they hiring for that position? And then try to provide that tangible value in your bullets here. And I think if you do that and then you add in that interest section, I think this resume is going to be ready to rock.
Wow, thank you.
No problem. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I might send you an email.
Okay. Yeah, please do. Please do. All right, awesome. So before we jump off, does anybody else on the phone have any questions based off of the stuff that we talked about? Feel free to unmute and ask or pop it in the chat box. I know, Ryan, you asked this question a long time ago, how you apply for a job in another country. I know you're still on the line. Do you want to explain a little bit more about what you mean? Like you mentioned applying for another job in, say, Mexico. What's your question in relation to resumes there?
So it's in relation to I am looking to move to another country. I'm a software developer here in Arkansas, and I'm just looking to expand my horizon in terms of looking into other countries. So I'm just looking into moving to Mexico, possibly within the next year. And I just want to look at the job opportunities into that country in particular.
Awesome. Evan, you killed me mentioning Arkansas. You couldn't pick anywhere else that we made fun of at the beginning.
I wasn't making fun of them. They were just a random faraway place that someone really did call me for a job in.
I remember him saying that. I was like,
And then I saw in the chat here, Ryan left the group chat. I'm like, oh, there we go. No, but that's a great question. I think that the best thing to do is, in terms of like strictly just, the system that we talk about all the time works abroad. So the best thing that you can do is find people who already work there, who work in a similar role. So if they're a developer, an engineer, or whatever, just send them a message and be like, and it's very easy, natural bridge. You're like, I love your country. I love the culture. I really want to move down there. But I just want to talk to somebody a little bit about what life is like in work and the culture around that, and what's the best way to go about it. And I'd imagine that you will get responses. So it's just a question of reaching out to those people, and then also understanding how the application process works. So I'm not as familiar with Mexico or even a bunch of other countries, but like here in the US, right, if you want to apply for a job online, you go to LinkedIn or you go to Indeed or you search for it on Google Jobs. Is it the same there, or are there nuances? Are there other sites? Even if you just quickly Google search like top job search engines or top job boards for Mexico, you should be able to find some of those sites. But if you're able to get in touch with somebody that actually lives there, they'll be able to give you the inside scoop and give you a better understanding of which job boards are worthwhile, which aren't, what nuances there are to the process, and especially cultural nuances, do's and don'ts, things like that, because those very easily get lost in translation and are pretty important. So my advice to you would be to just go find a bunch of people on LinkedIn who have the job title that you're looking for and work in Mexico. I think you can filter by geography, and just start sending off emails to them. Use the same process strategy that's listed in some of the articles, like find their email, and then just keep sending out emails, like maybe 2 a day or something. And if you make it about them, talk about like their job sounds really interesting, you have been there and you love their culture and you want to move there full time, like just play on those kind of heartstrings and make it about them. You'll absolutely get responses.
okay, yeah, that's a really good idea. I originally tried what you were mentioning from some of your emails that I've read with the LinkedIn in terms of networking that way, and it's worked out really well for me here too.
Awesome. I'm glad. Sweet. All right. Well, thank you guys all for hanging in for so long. And Evan and Nita, thank you guys for submitting and for hanging out with me and being awesome for our test run here, and also giving me some good feedback. We will have a dial in, I think, next time. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Austin.
Really, thank
Hey,
you for
Austin?
the review.
Yep.
Hey, I just have a quick question.
Yeah, shoot.
Regarding the quantitative results, so I listened to your video about the importance of having those, and I think I went a little too gung-ho with quantitative results. And the feedback I got yesterday from an individual was that, it's great, you have all these great results, but you missed the part about how and what you did to achieve those results. And my question is for you, how do you balance that, that I don't have too much quantitative results? Because the other feedback that I got was my resume was just kind of boring. It wasn't like, you have great results, but you have no hooks.
You can't win.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely a great question. So I think the best thing that you can do is try to consolidate those all into one bullet. So it's sort of like a cause and effect type deal. So you lead the bullet with the cause, like what you did and why you did it, and then you have the effect. So for example, we could say, the company was rolling out a 529 plan, and you can wordsmith this down a little bit, but company rolling out a 529 plan, they tasked me with disseminating it. So I came up with a strategy. One, I pared down the marketing collateral by 38%. So only the most relevant information for the salespeople was there. I executed a communication strategy that ensured that the salespeople would get it and that they would read it. And then that led to the salespeople going out and driving extra. So the key is to basically make that into one bullet. Your bullets don't necessarily have to be super, super short. I think what it comes down to is that people have all this experience and they want to add it all to the resume. And then you get like 7 bullets under one thing. And then you're like, well, I can't add any more. It's tough, but you have to prioritize, and then you're going to have to cut some of the stuff. So the easiest way to do that is to look at the job description. But again, also, if you're able to connect with people and get an understanding of like what's really important for this job, what skills, what experience, what results, if you can get an idea of that, that's really going to help you understand, like, yes, maybe this experience was very, very personal and important to you, but is it super relevant or important to the person who's going to hire you? Maybe not. So if you can make that distinction, that's going to help you pare down some of your bullets. And then for the bullets remaining, you can use that space to kind of fully flesh out your story. So my resume, for example, the one that I have on the site, I basically have a section under my most recent experience at the time, which said planned and executed campaigns for 2 major marketing agencies. And then I have a colon, and I have 2 bullets below it that basically walk through the campaign for both. So I think one of them was like we created a gamified coupon experience for Procter & Gamble, let's say it was some CPG company, where users would come play a game, earn rewards, get coupons, and that drove 10,000 new acquisitions in 3 months and led to X number of sales. So we had all that data in the back end. So I just took that and I tied it to the top. But I talked a little bit more about the fact that we came up with this idea for a gamified experience. So if I don't know if have you seen the resume that I have up on the site? If not, I can send it over to you if you drop it.
Yeah, I have. I think I have looked at it. I got to relook at it again, but I have been on your site.
Yeah. I would just say, don't be afraid to be a little bit verbose with your individual bullets, but just be mindful that too many verbose bullets, that's where you get in trouble. But if you just have like, let's call it 2, maybe you have your last 3 jobs, and you have 2 or 3 bullets under each, it's okay to be a bit verbose if it explains everything, if it has the hook, if it has the measurable results, then you're good to go, because that's exactly what people are looking for. I think the problem is people are like, man, I did all these amazing things, or they're like, man, I feel like I haven't done anything. I need to like make something up. But if you truly know like exactly what you did and the results that you got from it, don't be afraid to be a little bit verbose about that if it's very applicable to the job.
Yeah, and I mean, you've completely convinced me to take off some jobs that I do not need on there. I'm trying to get into medical device, and when I heard your story, I was like laughing.
Did you email me?
I'm not sure if
Okay.
I think I LinkedIn you.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
But yeah, so that's what I'm trying to transfer from pharmaceutical sales into medical device sales, and it's a huge hurdle. At least I feel it is, because for some reason they don't want people with pharmaceutical experience for medical device.
Yep. Okay.
So I'm trying to get over that hurdle. And change up my resume to sound more verbose than just pharmaceuticals.
Got it. Yeah, I would follow all the advice we talked about, and then if you want to talk more offline, like feel free to send me an email, and we can chat. Maybe submit your resume, and we'll.
I did submit my resume.
You did? Okay.
I did do it.
It's on me. It's on me.
Thanks.
Cool. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email, and we can chat about it more.
Okay, great. Thank
you. Well, thank all you guys for coming, and Evan and Anita, thank you again for submitting and helping me test this thing out. But I think it went pretty well, so we'll keep it up. But you guys all have a great night, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Bye.